I'm Sebastian St James. 2 Australian banks are in love. 2 Australian banks want to get married. But will the ACCC block this marriage? Will it speak now or forever hold its peace? The handsome groom is the ANZ Bank in beautiful blue. Look at that. And the blushing bride is Suncorp Bank. Oh, also in blue. There you go. ANZ Bank just announced a $5 billion takeover of Suncorp Bank, which is a Queensland bank. When I went to school, Pluto, which used to be a planet, was compared to other planets all the time. Here is Saturn at 74,000 miles, and there is Pluto. See how tiny Pluto really is in comparison to the ginormous Saturn. Let's graph that. We see in the blue that is the size of Saturn in comparison to the size of Pluto in the yellow. Wow, that's quite a difference. The question is, how do our banks compare to planets? Is it that ANZ Bank is the size of Saturn and Suncorp is the size of Pluto, which would look like that? Or is the ANZ Bank and the Suncorp much more similar in size, almost identical? Whether Suncorp and ANZ Bank are similarly sized or whether there's a massive difference like Saturn and Pluto will matter as far as whether the merger is allowed to go ahead or not. The market cap of ANZ Bank is 60.6 billion and Suncorp is 4.9. Okay, so if we graph that out, we notice there is a massive difference between the size of ANZ Bank and Suncorp, but not quite as big as there was between Saturn and Pluto. So that's good to know. Hang on, isn't there already something that blocks banks from merging? Yes, there is. In 1997, the Wallace Report came out that said there should be no mergers between the big 4 banks or the 4 pillars policy as we know it. Those 4 pillars are the CBA, the ANZ Bank, NAB, and the Westpac Bank. This means those 4 banks aren't allowed to merge with each other, but that's not what's happening here. ANZ, one of the pillars, is trying to merge with a tiny little regional bank up in Queensland. Is that okay? Not necessarily. If Suncorp was trying to merge with Bendigo Adelaide Bank, then I think it would be rubber stamped through. To start with, they're not even in the same regions. And secondly, well, they're not part of the Big 4, are they? But that is not what's happening. Because ANZ is a part of the Big 4, then it getting bigger by absorbing Suncorp may be a problem for the regulator. It is the job of the ACCC to decide whether this merger is allowed to go ahead. So on the ACCC's list, -1 point, because the ANZ is part of the Big 4, and it may be getting bigger. Commonwealth Bank is Australia's largest bank. The question is, how big is the ANZ Bank in comparison to the Commonwealth Bank? Is it that ANZ Bank is tiny in comparison to CBA, therefore if it merged with Suncorp it wouldn't really matter, or are they actually fairly similar size, and therefore if ANZ takes on Suncorp, then all of a sudden it may get almost as large or even bigger than the CBA? That I have the data on. The Commonwealth Bank is actually 158.7 billion, ANZ is 60. So if we actually graph that, it looks like that. Oh, so ANZ is actually somewhat tiny in comparison to CBA. Let's now take ANZ and merge it with Suncorp and see what happens. Well, this is the resulting graph. On the left we have CBA. Next we have ANZ as it is now, and then once it's merged with Suncorp, it gets a little bit bigger, but hardly any. On the ACCC's list, I would say +1 point that the ANZ Suncorp is still a small bank in comparison to the Commonwealth. I have a video coming out shortly which will tell you whether you should be investing in the shares of regional banks like Bank of Queensland and the Adelaide Bendigo Bank, or should you be putting your money in the Big 4. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. One hurdle that this merger has to get over is about what is the competition of banks specifically in Queensland, and here I'm talking about Queensland regional banks. And what are they? The Big 4 regional banks in Queensland are Suncorp, which we know about because that's part of the merger, the Bank of Queensland, Great Southern Bank, formerly known as CUA, and the Heritage Bank. So how big are they in comparison to each other? The customer deposits in the Suncorp is 31.299 billion. Bank of Queensland is next, fairly similar. Great Southern is dropping down a bit at 20 billion, and Heritage is the lowest at 14. Maybe that's why you've never heard of it if you live outside Queensland. The problem with that, as I see that list, they are the Big 4 in Queensland. Yes, so if one of those goes, my concern is it would be -1 point because the Queensland Big 4 goes down to the Big 3, Does Queensland have the 4-pillar policy in Queensland? No, it doesn't, but I have the same concerns. The question arises, what is really the size of these regional banks in comparison to the big four? So we're talking about NAB, ANZ, Westpac and Commonwealth. Are most Queenslanders actually banking with the big four, and therefore the regional banks, if we were to slice one of those off, it wouldn't really matter? I spent hours looking for this data of specifically where Queenslanders are banking, and it's not revealed to me. So instead, here are the national figures. The customer deposits at CBA is 347 billion. ANZ is a paltry 156. It's about half. Suncorp is 31, and you can see the rest down there. The reality is that Queenslanders are banking with the big four, but also Victorians, South Australians, Tasmanians, etc. are actually banking with some of the Queensland banks. So it's hard to say exactly, but I imagine that the big four are the big four everywhere, including Queensland. We've had a look at what the ACCC has to consider to approve or disapprove the merger. Will they approve the merger or will they disapprove the merger? There is another option, which is to approve the merger with conditions. It's a bit like when you first started dating your current partner. You said, yeah, I will date you, but with conditions. No, that didn't happen, did it? You were so desperate, you said, take me, I'm yours. So what are these conditions likely to be? They're anything where there is too much competition, and the competition therefore must be lessened. It's about regionality. So it could be that Suncorp may be forced to, or ANZ when they take over Suncorp, may be forced to divest some assets. What assets are we talking about? Well, typically they would be regional bank branches. Maybe there are too many branches in a particular area, and if they both combined, it would totally saturate and dominate that area. In which case they would simply stipulate, yes, you can merge, but you must sell off this branch, and this branch, and then you can go ahead. So that's a possibility. That is the regional banks, the banks in Queensland. The question is, if I have some cash right now and I want to place it in any of the big banks, which bank would actually win and which banks would be the loser? Go ahead and click on the video right now.